So, Michael, do you want to talk about some of the things that you're working on currently?
I can try to think about what those are. Well, I'll tell you, one of the things that popped into my mind recently was that there's a lot of interest in the world these days around UFOs, UAP, which I don't like the term, extraterrestrials, aliens, right? But it isn't a very deep interest, in my opinion, for the most part. It's a superficial, entertainment oriented, titillation, excitement for the most of the masses of people that find themselves, let's say, interested and expressing interest in it. I can't speak for everybody, of course, but when you see the articles that are online, the things that are being discussed in social media, articles that are being written about the government in the US, its findings or lack of findings, you realize that it is a very trivialized and marginalized, still marginalized in terms of a validity, a substance. And so people very much have an outward focus, an outward construct, context, and sense of what this is and what it would be about, which isn't thought about very deeply. It's still on the phenomenalistic level, the political level, and to a large degree, in a sense, in a religious context, because people continuously focus outside and project their beliefs, their adoration, their subservience, and all that, their fears towards this topic. But really, what is it? I've spoken a little bit at times about the reason for the Meyer context, and I'll come back to that. But for the people that are engaged in this, to me, rather pointless preoccupation with the phenomenon, and it's even discussed as the phenomenon, because people cannot think any deeper than that. The phenomenon, the lights in the sky. I, you know, I was thinking that instead of focusing on what it would be like to meet an extraterrestrial, what are they, all of this outward projection, that what about contemplating what it would be like to be like these actual people, not the fantasy ones that are the sci-fi versions, the space brothers, the evil reptilians and greys and other imaginary things. Yes, there are obviously in the universe, there's light and dark, positive and negative, hostile and benevolent, but we project these archetypes of extremes, especially with the evil, and then the new age type people, hyper positive, idealized, perfect space brothers, which don't exist either. So one of the things, I've been reading, making time to read Billy's stuff. It's the most important thing I can do. And I'm finally catching up a little bit. So I think I was talking about, I've been reading the book From the Depths of Outer Space. And this is such an amazing book. There is information in it that people who are familiar with the contact reports, they've read some of it before. But the depth of explanations and the new information about Meyer, his life, and his interactions with, and information about the people, the Plejaren extraterrestrials primarily, obviously. We see in this book, when we are reading or rereading, we are learning more about the difference, if you will, between fully human beings, such as we are, who are not bound to this earth and its gross limitations, its abuse, its violence, its ceaseless aggression and greed and climbing over, plundering, and people who've gone through that long ago and realized and determined from the benefit of what was brought to them, the teaching. Stephen referred to the spiritual teaching, the creation energy teaching, as it's called also. These people got it. They caught on. Now, it took them time. it took them quite a bit of time, because for the longest time, according to this information, the Plejaren extraterrestrials, their ancestors, their forebears, whatever, were kind of like Star Wars on steroids. They had the abilities, they had the technology, they had the long lifespans, and they went out often very unwisely into the universe that they explored, and they were aggressive. They brought people under their bondage or control. They may have destroyed whole planets. We're going back a long, long time in this tale. And at a certain point, more than 52,000 years ago, according to this, they were given the benefit or the opportunity to catch on with the way life should work, because they also had, as we do, they had and have free will. And as they evolved their consciousness and came into greater and greater knowledge and wisdom and technological abilities and all of that, because of the free will and because of this tug of war that goes on with every human being as we evolve, many of them leaned more towards the use of their knowledge and wisdom for power and control, as opposed to helping to serve evolving races and to evolve in peace and in love and in freedom and harmony, wisdom, for all of that purpose. So it's said in here that they had the benefit of teachers coming to them, as teachers of the creation energy spiritual teaching, and over time they settled themselves down, and they had the benefits of some high technology, some unusual things that occurred. Those of us who studied the material know a bit about these spheres and all, and they came to realize what the purpose and meaning of life and evolution of consciousness was. And it didn't make them perfect overnight, for sure, and they're still not perfect beings. That won't happen. But their evolution went into the right direction, where through trial and error as well and making mistakes, they keep refining and having a preponderance of the neutral, positive development and bringing benefit to other, evolving races. So, Daniel, my thinking, settled on this idea: what is it like to be like one of these ETs? Instead of chasing the lights in the sky, the phenomenon, which is not all of extraterrestrial origin by a long stretch, but that which is, let's just say, the Plejaren or their federation, the craft that are seen, and people are transfixed by the idea, the images, what have. Well, what is it really about? It's about human beings who have vessels or vehicles or craft, however you want to see it, who use those craft to come to certain other places in this universe for very specific purposes, with very, very specific guidelines of things that they can and cannot do. One of the things that they cannot do, you could say there's a kind of a prime directive here or something. They cannot come into interaction with our societies, with humankind as a whole on the planet, because we are not yet true space traveling people, not at all. We basically throw tin cans at the closest objects, and that's not space travel, and we won't have it for a long time. And we are not evolved in peace. We are not peaceful. And there are reasons for that aren't solely originating with us, the humans of Earth, but we are responsible nonetheless. So what would it be like to be like these people? Now, the beauty of Meyer's book, one of the beauties of this book, is that he explores how the Plejaren live in their worlds, what their societal structures require of them, what they receive from their societies, what is the nature of their art, what is the nature of their sports, of their, let's say, social order, because they're not political the way we are, because politics makes people hopelessly stupid and resolves nothing. So they are not political. They have to make decisions societally that are going to serve everybody for the benefit of all, and there's no coercion, there's no campaigning, there's no trade-offs. People must vote in unanimity, or things are not implemented in their worlds. Now, I could go into various aspects of it, but I encourage people to read this and to get a sense of the origins of these people, what they've gone through, how they have come to more than civilize themselves and develop themselves and put technology at their service in ways that we don't think of doing it. We always think sooner or later, and usually sooner, of taking a technological development to bring harm to other beings, to bring harm to human, animal life, any creatures existing, to exploit at any cost. The greater our technology, the more we feel we can control things. This is a strange kind of a behavior in a way, because when you look at the way the Plejaren are represented as living, they have phenomenal technology for all aspects in their life, but they do things themselves with their own hands, such as their own gardening. They have super advanced agriculture, which doesn't poison the earth, doesn't imbalance anything, and produces, if you read about how they grow fruits and vegetables, it's just like incredible. But there they are, cultivating their own gardens with their hands, learning how to live in harmony. They have domesticated animals, if you will, but they don't invite them into their homes. They don't regard animals the same way as they regard human beings. And that is a mistake. I could go into so many things, but when we get a more realistic view of what it is that the more advanced humans that we right now are looking outward towards and imagining about what they are really about, we realize from the teaching that the most essential things for us on earth are not withheld from us. We literally withhold it from ourselves. We not only withhold it, we destroy the opportunity for the growth of that which is necessary. We destroy the opportunity to bring our world in balance because of the ceaseless acquisitiveness and greed and aggression, some of which is literally a genetic flaw within us, but we do not use our rational mind. We do not look at life. Billy has said, if you want to see the creation, you want to see it in everything. Look at everything that exists, and you will see it speak to you, the nature, the things that are inanimate as well, but the order and organization of all things, and on and on. If we, in our moments of sanity, reflect and even go farther, and I'll talk about that maybe after I stop on this, give us time to breathe here, the meditation that is possible throughout the day, that any and every human being actually in some sense does unconsciously, a little disorganized and screwed up, but how we could be living like those actual ETs live, with all the struggles and challenges of life, but coming more and more into a balance and a knowing of what the meaning of our life is, which isn't just to accumulate all the crap we can and try to clutch it on our deathbeds. And as our arms are released, everything falls to the ground. And then they say, well, bag him and box him, he's out of here. There's something more to life and consciousness. And when Stephen was talking about previous and personalities yet to come, we have a lot to, flickering lights as well. We have a lot to learn, for a long time to come. And I think that this, to be like an ET, this is available to us. When you read Billy's books, the Om, the Psyche, the Might of the Thought, everything, from the depths of outer space, the introduction to meditation, the way to live, this is the same. These are the things, these are the teaching elements that these people live by. And yes, greater levels of understanding, they have that. Billy provides that teaching for them. But there's We have had nothing withheld from us. The problem is that over the past couple thousand years, this teaching, which was previously brought as well by other prophets, has been corrupted, turned into mind-enslaving, delusional, absolutely crazy belief systems, cults, and religions to make people fearful, dependent on imaginary gods, saints, saviors, and deities, and all the rest of the shit, and to abandon the self-responsibility that is the key for us to be like these actual ETs. So that's one of the things I've been focusing on. I think I'll stop with that at this point.
No, that's awesome. Because actually, I was thinking about having some questions about how some of the ETs actually live on their own planet. So you kind of just answered some of that already. Now that's really interesting. So in that new book, he says it describes a little bit more about like this, like you said, the sports they play or and the foods they eat and how they live their life, like actually gardening with their own hands and stuff like that.
Yes,
That's
and
really
then
cool.
on the other hand, it explains, it doesn't tell you how they do it, but it
Mm.
explains time travel, what's
Mm.
involved,
Oh, wow.
time and space and time travel, which is routine at these higher levels of development. You know, all this pretend people that say, I was on Mars for 10 years. No, nobody was on Mars. You know, all of the cheap, shoddy, self-aggrandizing, profit-oriented garbage that comes through social media, it's only going to get worse because the attempts to mislead people and further enslave them, it's coming. We know AI has a very bad ending, and some people can see that now, but right? Billy spoke about that in the Hanak prophecies 36 years ago. These computerized things turn against humankind, and that can spell the end. Yeah, Stephen?
Yeah, I was just speaking about that with my mother actually this morning about the 85-year war, the human AI robots. I was just talking to my mother about that this morning. It's quite a thought to have that's going to happen. So better prepare for it, I suppose.
Yeah, better be somewhere else.
Yeah.
The wilderness.
I think a big problem in our society is that we increasingly trust that ever improving technology that will fix things for us. So we think it will fix things for us. We lose ourselves in this trust in technology. And so we lose more and more lose the connection to ourselves. We get lost in the thought that technology will fix things for us. And we trust things like AI and stuff like that. There are many intelligent people that already said that technology will be the last big invention of mankind. And some kind of ways, I think the same.
Well, you know, if you, Daniel, if you look at this in terms of the Meyer material, that was, I think, said to be the most important bit of information in the Hanak prophecies about the dangers of this technology becoming autonomous, completely autonomous. I think that, you know, there are some questionable reports now about, you know, oh, robots are killing people. I don't know that that's true, but it is not a stretch. Anybody who can use, you know, a little bit of cause and effect, a little forethought. And it, strangely enough, it brings me, I think about one of the affirmations, one of the meditational phrases in this material, because part of this, you know, this lust for technology, we understand, you know, the shiny trinkets, the new thing, the greater ease, but it keeps taking people outside of themselves too, because they are looking always at the next thing, and they're walking around all the time like this, because we can't miss this next bit of thing. There's a meditation, I think I'll try it in German. Stets bleibe ich anspannt und gewinne dadurch Macht über mich selbst. If I got that close, it's I always remain relaxed and thereby gain might over myself. Billy has a lot of these focal point meditations or affirmations that one thinks about, can speak to themselves and all. And something like that, it seems just very nice, doesn't it? I always remain relaxed and thereby gain might over myself. But that is such a powerful thing. Imagine if all the human beings that were dwelling on this world, and that had all of the, that means the people that are, work with high technology, it means people that are artists at this, everything. If we were remaining relaxed, not rushing mentally and physically everywhere, and we gained might over ourselves, well, what does it mean? What would it bring? Well, there's something else, and I have a page because of what's so important in Meyer's information with the meditations, and these articles and contacts are up on my blog, and he talks about something also that's called the permanent state daily meditation. And I'll read and paraphrase a little along just to give an idea. This corresponds to what's a day awake consciousness meditation. Takes place in the course of the whole day, and the time of the whole day when one is awake and conscious, whether you are lying down, whether you're sitting, standing, walking, moving, and every activity. Now, this is important because both in a conscious and unconscious way, whereby the unconscious way corresponds to a level placed before the consciousness, which has nothing to do with the subconscious. This gets more and more, gee, well, what does he mean? But it corresponds to a recording, processing, switching, change, replaying level, according to Billy. Now, I don't expect people to grasp that right away, and it's not something we grasp right away, but he explains the first and most important step of the meditation is the day mindfulness attention permanent meditation. This is not only of special importance, it's the most important meditation of all. And it's because it results in the conscious and controlled cultivation of the constantly arising thoughts and the resulting feelings, which concentrate on everything and everyone, what is currently being thought, the feelings created, what's being done, spoken, executed, and handled, and what behaviors are being carried out. Okay, I'm not going to read more about that, but we come back and we say, I always remain relaxed and thereby gain might over myself. Billy says that meditation that I was just referring to is the most important one. It is ongoing 24/7. That's while you're awake only. That conscious control, that awareness of what the thoughts are and the recording of it, and then how it leads to and what those feelings, consequential feelings are. Then the feelings also lead to micro thoughts whereby we are choosing what actions to take or to not take, what things to perpetuate, what things to eliminate. And we are refining in every moment what we are saying, what we're doing, and yet we are not automatons. We don't go, what did he mean by that? It's not like you get locked into being paralyzed by every impulse and thought. The consciousness is awake and alert, taking this in to exert a healthy control. Thereby, we're gaining might over ourselves, our decisions, and the executed actions that come from thoughts to feelings to thoughts to actions or inactions, which are actions in the sense of deferment. These are the things that form our moment by moment daily life and onward, and in accordance with the immutable law of cause and effect. All of this, everything in the teaching is interconnected. It's like a thread weaves through everything, and all the laws of life and consciousness. And anywhere, we can open Billy's books anywhere. We go, oh, wow, really? I never thought of it that way, and it's not like a magician or you're being, you're getting some new age, quickie kind of a thing. It's the depth of things expressed in understandable, reasonable, non-fancy language, but that require Meyer's repetition. It requires our repetition through study and application and testing. So we don't get to believe. It's like, oh, well, I know for sure that Billy was with extraterrestrials traveling in time. No, You have to reason through that and then come to your own best informed, conclusions. And yet, in all truthfulness, you can say, well, I can't prove time travel that way, but the secret is I can. And I think we discussed this briefly on one of the previous shows. You can prove to yourself in a simple and elegant way the absolute certainty of time travel, and that this man and these people, Billy Meyer and his friends, whoever they may be, absolutely have that at their disposal and prove it to a scientific and legal standard without ever drawing fancy attention to it. It's in the scientific, geopolitical, environmental, medical, economic information, the prophetically accurate information that Meyer has published sometimes up to 75 years before the events or discoveries occur. Any kid, 12 years old, maybe 14, starts to be able to think, and, well, how did he do that? And then the kid, actually, or any human beings could say, well, he must have copied it from somebody. Well, let's find out. How do you find out if he copied it? It's very simple. You take this particular thing about, let's say, the water on the south pole of Mars or whatever. And we have hundreds. Okay, take one. And then you go onto Google and you go, when was this discovered? Earliest date. Then you're going to get NASA, JPL, and all these fancy people telling you when they discovered these things. Then you go over here to this other part where Billy Myers published it. And you search and you research and you come to find that you could prove that it's already in a document or a book published 6 months or 60 years before NASA or anybody else. And as this one poor fellow who's a really nice guy, a scientist working at NASA USGS on the Mars imaging, his first response to try to make himself feel comfortable, well, maybe he makes lucky guesses. And then I present 3 pages worth of stuff. And he says to me, the scientist says, I hope you're not going to try to convince me that this is true. And I said, yeah, you're a scientist, right? Why shouldn't I? Either I can, but on the basis of credible factual information, or it's not true. And why would I try to convince you something not true? Let's find out. No, he didn't want any part of it, because we train people in our world to just think in terms of, well, what do the experts say? What do the experts? Well, the experts have said this is when they discovered it. They can't change it. They can't go back. And we can find it published by Billy Meyer in so many cases. And that's only in a few thousand pages of the English translations where we've recognized that information. What happens now when you go back through all Billy's information, you start going, oh, wait a minute, wasn't that also recently discovered? And this was recent. And there's so many more out there, and that applies to everything. I won't go into it in depth, but COVID, the difficulties going on in Eastern Europe, what's to come from that, even the coming fall of the House of Windsor, which now people can start to say, hey, things might be going badly over there with all this stuff getting shaken. Well, Billy published that. Oh my gosh. I think he first published it back in the 40s or 50s, but certainly somewhere in the 70s. And the crown, has cracked or fallen. The House of Windsor is no more. And then explaining that divorces and these infighting things and all are going to contribute to the collapse of the House of Windsor, the royalty. It's in writing. It's been there a long time. And I guarantee you, as those other details fulfill, and as they get published, we show you that they're there, most people, not all, most people will be too stupid to recognize it. They will be too dumbed down to comprehend what that means. And what that means is these people had access to time travel, and they saw the future, and they reported on it. Does that mean that everything in the future is set? No. But anyway, I always remain relaxed and thereby gain light over my soul. That's what I aspire to, right? Let's hear it.
there's a lot of people out there that don't want us to read books, especially they don't want the younger generations, the next generations to read interesting books. Not only Billy Meyer's books, but other interesting books, like books about forbidden archaeology, ancient alien stuff. I don't know, Tartaria. We talked about, what did we talk about last time? Was it Atlantis? I don't recall. Like stuff that, if you read it, makes you think that there is something fishy going on here. If you read stuff about Tartaria, you're going crazy. If you read it, you find so much stuff. So, but yeah, people are being kept away from books like that. Maybe I'm never read a Billy Meyer book until now, but all the other interesting books and
well, Daniel, I want to throw a thought at you. You will not find as much information on Atlantis, Lemuria, Mu, ancient civilizations, the earliest colonizations by extraterrestrials anywhere, more abundant and probably far more accurate than exists in the Meyer material. This is who the various gods of the past were, who set themselves up in Egypt, who were controlling the ancient Israelites, who were behind, every manifestation through religions, how to control it, for what purposes, the civilizations that came and gone, the earliest Plejaren, who were here working with very primitive earth human beings, introducing slowly aspects of civilization, fire making and maybe construction of buildings, mathematics, who were the real Syrians who worked with the far more advanced terrestrials who were, I'm trying to remember which civilization, who are those good guys? Maybe you remember who I'm talking about. For some reason, just slipped my mind. The Syrians worked with the Sumerians. That's it.
Sumerians, yeah.
Yeah, and the people that are writing, the people that are writing ancient archaeology and history, where are they getting their information? From their interpretation of stuff? You had Zecharia Sitchin. I met him briefly. I know a guy who worked with him, and he had this whole thing about the Anunnaki, and he had it all wrong. This whole thing, Nibiru, it's not a planet. It's a comet that comes around every 3,600 years. No life on it. And the Anunnaki were not enslaving humans on Earth to mine gold, throw in the atmosphere. This is all stuff that he managed to misunderstand because of his lack of understanding. Now, he got some wonderful illustrations in there with sculptures of advanced people who had space helmets on and all this stuff. But these people, they didn't know enough of what they were looking at or understanding. Even if they thought they were scholars understanding things, they couldn't separate the myth from the facts. So since you're interested, I mean, it's a fascinating area. Ancient civilizations, ancient, extraterrestrials. These, in many cases, these were human beings coming here from the civilizations, societies connected to the Plejaren and others. For ill or for good, you had the so-called Giza intelligences living underneath the Great Pyramid and lording it over the primitive earth human beings through control, what's called telenotic control. It lasted into the 20th century. There was a whole agenda to create a world religion, basically to bring everybody under control of these ETs who lived under there. If you ever heard of the Ashtar Command, it was a real thing. They were part of that. This is all in the Meyer material, and I guarantee you, Graham Hancock or anybody, they don't know. They're going to look around and they're going to come up with stuff, hit or miss. They probably get stuff right. They get a lot of stuff wrong. But because you're going to go, well, which source, since you can't prove it yourself, Michael, if there were this or that, which source do you think is going to be more accurate? I'm going to say, based on the track record, of course, Meyer's more accurate. I haven't found wrong information, and it's never theoretical. He didn't theorize about, well, maybe there was a group that they tell you when and who and what they did and what happened to them and why they died off, or these ones, retreated to this area. this is a history like you can't get from anything else. And that's why when we speak about it, like and not to take you off, because what you're talking about is true, that the history is going to be further controlled, and everything will be further controlled if it's allowed to be, and many people will just allow it. So read this, know this now, learn it now, keep it now to pass on, because to the survivors, because the fools that are in power now and that are just clawing their way over each other to rule the world I mean, they're just going to bring chaos. The left, the right, whichever way you want to look at it, nothing but anarchy coming. And people that think the great populist movements, anarchy, 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 idiots elevating other idiots who have no answers based on real truth and the teaching of life, teaching of the truth, teaching of the spirit, have no clue how life works. They simply know power and that they want to acquire it. So these are treasures for the survivors. And for those young enough to be among them, keep being among the survivors and passing this on in whatever forms you can. And in 800 years, as Billy even told me over 20 years ago, and we had a conversation, yes, 800 more years, 800 years.
Yeah, the way I like to put it is it's for the people of today to grasp and the people of tomorrow to understand.
It's a good way of looking at it, because they'll make it available to those once they grasp it.
But how do you expect people to find these informations if they especially the younger generations, if they getting dragged down the social media quicksand? I don't know how to put it in other words. More and more, they want us to look into our phones. They don't want us to raise our awareness for important things. I think all these distractions that the new generations are being born into are intentional. We are a generation, you and we guys, we are a generation that read books and engaged with nature back then.
Yeah.
Everything.
The last one probably for me and Dustin, and at the very least.
There you go. Everything, and you're the younger generation, but let's answer this as best we can. Everything is a double-edged sword. Yeah. So while you might have something to do your wood carvings with and make nice little things, the fact of the matter is it has unpleasant applications if misused, and positive applications and outcomes if applied in the right way. Everything. Look, how did you, Steve? How did you find the material? Did you see a video? Did you read it? You found something through technology, probably. When right? So we can't just say, oh, this is all evil. No, it's a double-edged sword. How you use something. And we, like Daniel, you're using your platform here to explore something, and you're posing questions and you're posing challenges, and you're going to be seen by people also that you might not even think are your audience, who will find you. And they're not all going to be certainly my age. They're going to be in your guys' ages, that your span, you're much closer there in that age group. And they're going to be, and there are, because I'm contacted on Facebook, mostly, sometimes on Twitter every week, and through email. And on the blog, people show up on the blog, people who found this. And I'm always going, well, we're pretty suppressed. YouTube took down my channel, but I had one that was still good and wasn't, I'm rebuilding it. So I have a few hundred views on a video instead of thousands. Okay, so what? We just do whatever we can. Every little piece.
Even one person, if it helps to change even just one person, that's enough, because that one person can help another one, and so on and so forth, into our material existence.
That's the snowball that Billy spoke about, Stephen. Remember? Yeah. The snowball. Yeah, I mean, that's it. One person, the next it grows. Just going to take time, because it's a slow process.
Since you talked about the technology and how to use it, of course, you're right. It's always how you use the technology. You can use it for good things. You can use it for bad things. You have to raise your awareness of how you use it. But it's also a matter of how you are allowed to use it. And you felt it yourself. You got thrown off YouTube.
Mhm.
That's another big problem, because censorship is a big problem. We have to take care what we are talking about if we want to keep on spreading our informations, bring interesting guys to this platform. You always have to be careful what you're talking about, and this is not right. Interesting information, like I said, it's also with the books. You find books like, for example, Billy Meyer's books, and people don't sell it. They don't want to sell it. You can't find them. On which platforms can you find Billy Meyer's books?
Canada, me, Australia, Hong Kong, Switzerland, of course, in different places. And the thing is that while it's true, you get thrown off the technology. For instance, now we have monthly meetings online that are international, that are on Zoom. And let's also know that people who are in business and are savvy, they say to themselves, this YouTube is shutting everybody down. It's a great opportunity for us. So now also I understand, I haven't gone to build a channel there, but there's Rumble, there's Brighteon, there's now these other platforms, for better or for worse, that are, finding places. And then, as we say, the meetings that people have online and the different ways that people will creatively make things known. Human beings are very creative, actually, clearly, as you said as well, for better or for worse. And because we are, we'll get a great idea and we'll start doing things that way. And sometimes a great idea can be misused. I was just reading a thing about the danger that now with the AI and the World Economic Forum, they're going to control everything. All books will only be going through digital books. And I laugh a little bit because I'm one of the first people ever to do digital book publishing online in 1995, 96. Started the thing called ebooks and then netbooks. And then the guy I was working with decided he was just pump and dump his company stock instead of hanging it in. And the guy he was talking to was a guy who had a warehouse full of books named Jeff Bezos, who now has, of course, I mean, so is this a good thing or is it a bad thing? Well, it's a knife. You can carve things and cut your food with it, or you can, or you can defend yourself with it. How we use things, that we are responsible for that. So hopefully, and I think this is a key thing to just focus on for a moment, we think about that law, that immutable law of cause and effect. It is completely neglected in this country and many countries. People think there's an imaginary God who's going to save everything, although the track record for God answering prayers is pretty pathetic. It's zip, really. So people think that they can just do things, and if you lie about it, that's what politics is, primarily diplomacy and politics, are lying to pretend that things aren't what they are. But cause and effect is a stupid law. It doesn't care. It goes, oh, that, you get this, you get that. If you don't want this, don't do that. But people will go to, it's the political, the speeches, the lies. So we are responsible for what we do with what we have, with what we know. And we make some mistakes, of course. We just don't keep repeating the ones that are especially not evolutionary for ourselves or beneficial for others as well. This is simple stuff, but human beings are too complicated and they're dazzled by glittery things. They want that at any cost. Don't tell me about that. We'll deal with it later. No, it doesn't exist now because I want that.
Really, there is no later, though. It's all right now. Reality is only now.
And that now comes, and this now comes, and we walk into the mall. And the cause and effect, because we've created a time sense in the way we perceive things. We do this thing in this now, but we don't see these layers of now in front of us. We don't say, oh, wait a minute, if I do that to him, thinking I'm getting away with it, then this thing can happen here before you know it. And then that, you compress that, this, like you're saying, it's now. I might as well not go there. And then I don't have that now to deal with.
Therein lies the continuous daily meditation. I've started learning how to grasp that a couple of months ago, and I'm getting there. Some days are easier than others.
Forever that way. But aren't you fortunate at your age that these things, you found them? This is the miracle of life. Previous personality, people say in this, oh, I hope in the next life I'll find the mission. I said, well, you found
Make
it
it
now.
effective.
What? Say it again.
Then make it effective.
Make it effective. Well, you're living with that, idea construct and the realization that you found it now. You didn't wake up when you were 3 years old and go, I've got to make sure I find the mission, but circumstances and the previous impulses and all this stuff, that's in the material. Ding, you finally walked into that which your consciousness, evolving consciousness, spirit form, and you've been creating it for a long time. So you get it because that's the consequence of that in the causal, lineage of things too.
The moment I found the mission, it was just like that. Everything made sense. All the negative, all the positive, everything I ever experienced in this life just made sense.
Isn't that funny?
Like,
how everything falls in place, isn't it?
Yeah, it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing.
Wow.
My first time finding, man, it was like I was melting into the planet for about a week. It lasted about a week, and my goodness, it was amazing. I was melting into the world.
Whoa, I love hearing that. My finding it was a more gradual. I mean, it was an aha with the UFO part, and then an aha with the prophecies, and an aha with the teaching, and it came sequentially because it was still more sequential up until recently, and within the last, who knows, X number of years. Now that everything's available, it's all there, and that to me is what's so wonderful for people now. You can fall into it and have the realization in your own time and space, and go, okay, I think I've got a few lifetimes of work to do in this lifetime.
Yeah, I can do what I can do here, but there's still so much more to do for all of time, for all of duration.
We have no idea. We don't have the faintest idea.
Barely scratched the surface of what the universe truly holds, but not even just the universe, what creation, the scene holds for us.
It's great to know that we don't know. When we go, wow, I fell into and then we go, what don't I know? What is only reality? Why do you think you only have a lifespan of 8 years? You can't handle it all. Sure, someone who's ostensibly lived it many times over, like, Billy.
I had a question too. With all the ETs that Billy has interacted with, which one has resonated with you the most, Michael?
You mean the persons?
Yes, persons.
The individuals?
Yes.
It's an interesting thing, because what I would say is, at least in the way, and Billy speaks about this, how things are, when he receives the conversations and transcribes them, that they're still, while he gets the absolute meaning right, there's a filtration to a degree through his person in the language or the way. So to me, and some people said, oh, it's just one guy writing everything. I would say in certain ways, there is the neutrality that is present with each person is so uniform that when there is something that steps out of it a little, for instance, if Ptah says something to him about, are you kidding me? Is that a joke? Or Brahmunda or Florina say, oh my gosh, I saw, they're killing these people. Isn't there's an element where they step out of the purely kind of almost Spockian neutrality, logic, presenting the factual, and the sequences of it's a teaching in the content reports as well. It leads you through this, and then they ask that. So I would say that I've enjoyed, and it's also true, Quetzal has said it here and there, where they kind of blip out for a second away from that purely informational, constructological explanations of things, and there's a personal flavor that comes through, either in, like Semyaze in earlier contexts. What are you saying? What does that mean? I don't understand what you're saying, she says to Billy. He says, oh, it's okay. It's a joke. It's earth humor, and she's very literal. So when he uses a phrase in German, or if we use it in English, that's a kind of a vernacular, a way of expressing something that's a kind of a peculiar little thing. She goes, doesn't compute. I don't know what you're talking about. And that's a delightful thing, because it pops up here and there throughout the material. So I could say that it isn't, it's like each of these people brings to the conversation something. The people, there's the guy who was like 1,000 years old, and someone else, and they come and they are specialists. One guy is a language specialist. I mean, talk about hundreds of years of studying languages, all sorts of languages. And another one who's examined and studied our politics, looking at the current situations and the geopolitical thing that's going on pertaining to the war. Say it again?
Zafanatinic.
Oh, Zafanatinic, the computer guy. Yeah. And there was a previous Zafanat Paneah who's mentioned also in the book about the depths of outer space. But I feel that even, Billy, I mean, he brings forward a certain flavor and character, and, occasionally slaps them around a little bit, but still it's a teaching. And Billy expounds on so many things that I would say, to make a long story, which I'm prone to, I like it all for any and all the reasons, and I don't get too much of a sense of a personality from anybody. I get a little here and there. That human unique personality quality just comes through a little bit, but for the most part, it is people doing their duty. Pflicht, I guess it is, or something in German. Das ist meine Pflicht. They come forward with that sense of, I'm here to do this. I am in charge of this thing, and today I bring you this. And it's never an elevation of their egos. It's a service that's performed. I don't know how to put that.
I want to add another thing to something that we talked about before. It seems to me that experiences like Stephen's are expectations. I may be wrong, but that's what I think. He's conscious and open-minded, maybe because he's not allowing himself to pay too much attention to all these distractions surrounding us. I noticed that hot topics like, let's say, UFOs, Billy Meyer, spirituality, the paranormal, stuff like that, are often suppressed. I noticed that when I go to YouTube and watch videos about, I don't know, spirituality, UFOs, they have quite a few views. That's true. But on the other hand, you go to a social media app and you see a girl shaking her behind, and you got like 60 million views. Isn't that crazy?
That's ridiculous.
Doesn't that tell us something about what's happening here? I think it's crazy. Not that I don't enjoy a little booty shake, but I think it's crazy. This is the distraction that I'm talking about. Somebody doesn't want us to be or become conscious about certain things, and this is driving me nuts, guys.
There's 5 people that I can draw from. Not people, I don't know them personally, but I would say about a group of 5 people that control most of what's going on around here. I'm going to say they're probably at the head of some kind of religious, political, secret society, if you want to call it that. But from what I can gather, but maybe about 5 people involved at the very, very top of it all.
There's another thing, and that is, and this isn't spoken about because certainly, in today's politically correct world, nobody wants to hear it. Overpopulation. We human beings overbreed, and consequently, undereducate, undernourish, under care for, by virtue of the burden that constantly bringing forward new life places on the planet and on the societies and on the individuals. Now, this might sound like, it's one of these taboo topics. When you read the material on overpopulation, you realize that FIGU, the organization, Billy Meyer, is not trying to commit genocide or anything like that. Their whole thing, this is the core. As Figu puts it, this is the underlying core of all problems. And when you analyze them, and you can literally do a physical experiment. You get an aquarium or a terrarium. That means like an enclosed glass bowl full of dirt or a glass thing full of water. And you put in the earth and you put in water and you put in organisms, little fish here, small life forms, etc. The more you put in of these in a finite space, despite what the ocean's so big, this is a vast. No, the more you put in, the more of a burden you place on that environment. If you do the experiment, you will find that you're not producing bountiful, overflowing bounty. You are watching a system rise, flower, and deteriorate and die. And the information in the Meyer material about what's coming, probably by 2030 because of this, parts of the oceans are already dead. Greta Thunberg doesn't know what ass from her elbow, all this stuff. And because there are too many people, we get all this stuff. So the lower nature, and there's nothing wrong with some of our lower nature. We like what we like, but it is promoted relentlessly because there's a constant newness. The life forms become younger and younger. And yes, you have the olders and they die, but this is a constant appeal and a dumbing down. So the education that once was at least present for the most part, for better or for worse, for the young, has been deteriorated as well. It's designed to slot people more and more into the service of the machine, of the organizations, of the profit making. And this is where the call for a cessation, a temporary cessation of births, not to wipe people out, to let natural attrition take place so the planet can literally respire and breathe and things can cease to be exterminated, which is going on a constant basis, where some things can be preserved and cultivated and maintained and flourish and flower. The prophecies, the predictions show humankind will not listen, and an extinction comes our way from our own